Hello friends, and welcome to another landscape photography vlog, this time from the beautiful American Southwest. In this video we capture some gorgeous textures, shapes, and patterns, and I also share my biggest tip that has not only allowed me to shoot better photography, but also have more fun while doing it. I really hope you enjoy the video. It's just amazing out here. Right behind me are some of the coolest textures and patterns that I've ever seen. I photographed back here in 2018. And I didn't feel like I was able to achieve what I really wanted to creatively. It's a beautiful day today, got a little bit of wind, some nice dramatic clouds going on. I'm so excited to take you guys on this photography adventure because some of the stuff in here is hard to put into words. I almost don't want to photograph this. I just want to stare at it. I feel like it's one of those things that looks amazing in person, and I don't even know if it's going to translate well into the camera. So here's the swirly pattern that I was talking about. And it's really cool. Just this curvature in here. And right in here, this part is amazing. So I just need to figure out a way to compose this. I wonder if getting on top of this little ledge right there would help. It might. So I decided to wander on top of the rock and take my first test shot. And here's how it turned out. So like how I mentioned earlier, I didn't quite feel like this image translated as well as when I was standing there and witnessing the scene in person. And that's the funny thing about photography sometimes. Some moments, although beautiful, might not work photographically. So after shooting this one, I found some dramatic rock spires in the distance and decided to wander over there to see what I could find. Wow, just check this out right now. So many colors, textures, shapes. So this is with my wide angle lens. And you can see this texture that leads out into this background, this peak right there. There's another one right behind here as well. And then if I look this way, there are all of these textures on the rock. And some of them look like little skulls right there in the yellow and brown part of the rock. So I think that's something I'm going to want to explore more. I think I'm going to stick to the wide angle for now because, you know, there are some telephoto compositions that I see, but for the most part, you can get really close to all these patterns. So even though you're using a wide angle lens, you can still create a lot of great abstract shots. I'm going to try just a standard wide angle shot of this scene with the beautiful peak and the leading line, getting some of the sky in there, some of the sky texture. And then I'm going to switch over and start trying some more intimate shots. That's usually the way I work, is I'll take a nice overall shot of the scene and then kind of start working my way down. Yeah, I think it's time to stop rambling and start taking the picture. So here's just a classic shot taken with my 16-35, and I absolutely loved the color contrast here between those warmer tones in the rock and that dramatic blue tone in the stormy sky. From here I decided to get a little bit closer to the patterns, and then I shot this. So right behind me, you have this kind of dramatic, spiky peak. And then right underneath here are these beautiful foreground patterns. So I'm using the peak as kind of a focal point for the 16-35 lens, and I'm doing a vertical where you get those patterns really leading up to the background. And the lighting right now is just amazing. You've got this really subtle, soft, warm glow, beautiful, dark, textured clouds up above. I mean, you can't ask for much more when it comes to landscape photography. All right, so check that out. All these beautiful patterns leading up to the peak. Got the clouds up there. This is at about 16 millimeters. Now watch what happens when I get down right there. So when you get down a little lower, it really accentuates the foreground and you lose some of the midground. Now that could be a good or a bad thing depending on how much you want to accentuate this and how much you want to lose that midground. But sometimes the midground does make for an interesting photo, so it's something to consider when you're composing. And then if I move even a few feet in front of me, look at just how it changes that foreground pattern. Even right in here, these swirls. I mean, there's really endless possibilities. And using the wide-angle lens is all about movement. Let's see what it looks like lower. It's kind of cool. Oh my gosh, this is perfect. The clouds are mimicking the pattern right now. Wow. As far as my settings go, keeping it simple here. I've got ISO 500, f16, and I'm doing a bit of an exposure bracket. This was definitely one of the most interesting rock formations that I found that day, and I thought it made for a really nice wide-angle frame with that little bit of sunset glow hitting the right side of the peaks. It was also really nice that the clouds made this nice V shape that helped to create a little bit more symmetry for this photograph. Since I was facing away from the sun, I didn't have to do any exposure blending. This was a simple single exposure, and I made sure to shoot f16 so that I could get everything in focus here. Well, I've been photographing for about 4 hours, and it seriously feels like it's been 5 minutes. I mean, I've been nonstop just finding so many cool things to shoot. I don't know how many words I can use to describe this experience, but yeah. Amazing. So even though these textures and patterns were absolutely beautiful from the ground, I decided to pop up the drone and see what they looked like from above. And I was truly blown away with what I saw. Witnessing these patterns and textures from above made me feel like I was photographing on another planet. So similarly to those wide-angle shots I was capturing earlier, the drone is all about movement. So flying the drone in different positions, angling the camera, and even rotating the drone can completely change what that composition looks like. So it takes a lot of playing around to find that right perspective. Well, good morning, everyone. It is just after sunrise, and I'm doing a little bit of abstract photography. It looks like the sky has just now opened up. It was very, very dark earlier. No light broke through, but it did give me a good opportunity to focus on some of these telephoto abstract shots. You can see some of these really cool textures. Even in here, some of the simplicity in these lines is really cool. So I've just been really focusing on isolating some of these simple shapes and colors. Even right here, there's this nice wave of white and red. So I think there's a lot of potential in that rock wall behind me, and there's potential in a lot of these beautiful rock walls. I mean, just so many patterns, textures, and shapes, and it is, once again, just very overwhelming. And I think what's really helped me the most, like my biggest tip that's really helped me over the years to try and come up with compelling compositions in this type of environment, is to start thinking of the subject as something different from what it actually is. So yes, we are standing amongst a bunch of rocks, but what other stories could you come up with while you're here? I mean, the most obvious one I can think of is, well, it almost looks like we're on a different planet. But even beyond that, going into the more abstract photography, I feel like when I can look at these different patterns and recognize different subjects in the patterns, it tells a completely different story about the photograph. So, you know, in a lot of these vlogs, I randomly find dragons in the rocks, and faces and creatures. And doing that has not only allowed me to create some of my favorite images, but it's also allowed me to have a lot more fun when I'm out here photographing. Because instead of thinking of like the technical stuff that we've learned, like, yes, rule of thirds, and yes, that's a leading line, and this is repetition of pattern. As somebody who's not really that technical, I've never been able to put those into practice quite as much as just the most, simple way of thinking about it, which is, wow, that looks really cool. And then you take the picture and realize, okay, how can I take this really cool thing that I took a photograph of and simplify it? What are the elements of this really cool thing that aren't quite as cool? What are the distracting elements? Is there anything on the sides of the frame I can get rid of to tell a better story? And thinking of it in less of a technical sense and more of a creative, practical sense has just really helped me with my photography. And I don't know if you have that kind of mindset. Maybe you're more of a technical mindset and the other tools will help you. But if you are somebody who kind of struggles with composition and you find yourself a bit overwhelmed in places like this, just really slow down and have a bit of fun with it. See what interesting things you can find amongst the more obvious compositions. And yeah, you might come away with something really interesting. So the next time you're out there in field, just make sure to have fun, play around, and express your creativity. With that, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.